Good morning and welcome. Here we are at day 4 of the 2020 Education Estates Conference, and what a fabulous array of talent we have all had pleasure from listening from this week. I apologise in advance if the standard drops slightly here, but I shall endeavour nonetheless. My name is Tim Warnford of Warnford Consulting. Today's presentation is why CIF bids fail and the 3 key reasons. If you are joining me live, that's wonderful. Please forward your questions during this presentation. If you are listening to this at some future date, again, always feel free to contact me with any questions. Always more than happy to help. So I'm going to take you through the afternoon session now. So what I'm going to plan to cover today are my 3 key reasons. First one being volume, second one being the quantity rather than the quality of bids, and the third key reason is how important the financial imperative of schools making a financial contribution. So let's start with the first key reason, the biggest reason would be volume. I mean, circa 4,500 applications submitted every December, and as you can see from the matrix here, the number of projects which are awarded kind of tend to be around the 1,400 mark, and the number of schools which benefit around the 1,200 mark. There have been bumpy years. There was the 2018-2019 year where there was an additional £38 million which came from the Healthy Pupils Capital Fund. And obviously this year, the second tranche has made it an absolutely remarkable year. If you consider how many of us that are involved within this sector on the 29th of June were still worried about what was going to happen, and then by early August we had, as I say, a second tranche which had made it a record-breaking year. I think the important thing to remember here is, as you can see, the size of the pot hasn't fluctuated enormously, and to be honest, neither have the projects and schools that have been awarded, and likewise the number of applicants. This year the additional £180 million resulted in the traditional 76-77% threshold dropping down to 73%, and that is effectively what £180 million, additional £180 million can buy you. So I think that the other people will have plenty of other reasons to posit as to why CIF bids fail. I think if we start with the sheer numbers of it, that is a pretty good place to start, really, and hopefully not too controversial. The second reason is, in my opinion, the quantity as opposed to the quality of bids, and perhaps I'm going to encourage consultants, certainly schools, to consider what type of bid. And obviously the ESFA, in their guidance, always produce their hierarchy of need to explain which bids are more likely to be favoured. And in my opinion, the way I've tried to lay this out for you is to talk about the risk. So clearly risk to life, which would perhaps support bids such as fire safety, asbestos removal, gas safety, some types of safeguarding, will attract the attentions of the evaluators. And I, in my opinion and in my experience and from the data that I have had, I would suggest there's a 50% plus chance of a well-written bid which is effectively looking at the risk of life that will be successful. I think if we then go down to the next risk, we would perhaps be looking at risk of full or partial closure. I think one good example there would be a boiler or heating system without heating or hot water. Then in theory the school would face partial closure depending on the size of the plant room that's servicing the block. I mean, a primary school may only have one plant room, and therefore it may affect the whole school. Larger secondaries may be more than one plant room, which only affects certain blocks. But nonetheless, the risk of closure is something else that, again, is likely to attract the attention of evaluators. And I would say approximately about 40% plus. I then want to bring up roofs, and I think roofs are a very good example because they pose the question of a risk of rising costs. That if you do not fix your failing fabric within in a timely manner, the chances are that the cost will rise because further damage will be caused. And I mean, if you're talking about water penetrating the covering and the insulation, and it's on a timber deck, possibly electrical circuits running through this, if it's not addressed soon, then what would have cost X one year, it's a good chance to be costing Y in a following year. So again, apart from obviously the impact on the teaching and learning environment, if you've got buckets and you've got water running down from the ceiling or down the walls, it's not a particularly conducive place. So again, I think roofs again are always a banker. Roofs constitute the largest number of type of work package submissions, and they approximately just over a third of roofing bids are successful. So a lot of wastage there. Windows I'm going to use as an example because although it's a Condition Improvement Fund, in my opinion, windows without a health and safety element to it, chances aren't going to be wonderfully successful. So we're looking at windows which are affecting a second or a third story, particularly where handles, etc., have broken, and they're either boarded up to stop pupils clambering out, etc., or falling out. I would suggest that the chances of a window submission being successful are maybe less than 1 in 20. 1 in 5, so 20%, without some element of for health and safety to it as well. One other really important thing to say here is that the number of schools which are awarded both their bids is probably less than 20%. Many congratulations to those consultants and schools which do get both of their bids through. It's a tall order, but again, it's just an idea that I want to put out there, that governing bodies perhaps need to move with managed expectation that both of them will come through. The third reason, in my opinion, that bids are possibly unsuccessful is the ESFA could not have made it any clearer that they require those schools who can afford to make a financial contribution to make a financial contribution. Very often schools will say, oh, you can't afford to make a contribution. In my opinion, it's more, can you afford not to make a contribution? Sometimes the scoring weightings to bids have been pretty basic insofar as we've understood that this section will carry 60% weighting, this one 25, and this one 15. The ESFA have now moved to show a sliding scale of the type of marks that can be accrued, subject to the level of financial contribution. And the point here is that if the school does not make a financial contribution, it will not accrue any marks. Therefore, the threshold will be that much harder to achieve, and the additional pressure it will put on both the project need and the project planning sections of the bid. If we look at post-16 providers who are looking for infrastructure grants to provide T-levels, then the deal on the table there is match funding, so 50% funding. Here, you're being asked to contribute, a minimum of 5, but if you can get to 15%, which is still a decent return, then the bid is going to stand that much more greater chance of success. And to be honest, a year's worth of work to fail by 1% because you didn't put enough money into it is very, very frustrating. It's frustrating for the consultant who clearly works at risk. It's frustrating for the school, perhaps the teachers, etc., and certainly the governing board. Here are some ESFA feedback quotes. These are live quotes. This is exactly the very phraseology used, and I don't think they could make it any more explicit as to why certain bids have failed. The lack of contribution, maximum marks would have been awarded, etc., etc., etc. For those schools who can't afford at the moment to make a CIF contribution, and as part of best practice and as promoted under Good Estate Management for Schools, GEMS, you really need to think of ways in which you can generate additional income. You need to think about ways in which you can make savings, perhaps from installation of things like solar PV, LED, and perhaps to ring fence those savings and put towards a future bid. Now, you should be basically maximising and optimising your facilities as a matter of course. But I'm just saying that for those schools that at the moment don't have the wherewithal, don't have the reserves in which to make a financial contribution, start thinking about how you might be able to make future ones, as well as clearly generate sufficient income and make sufficient savings to be able to offset all of the budgets cuts that you've experienced. I haven't even used the word COVID this year, but it's estimated that about £1 billion worth of additional money has been spent on COVID measures and through a loss of out of hours income, and therefore that money's got to come back somewhere. I am always keen not to submit anyone to death by PowerPoint, and therefore I will not read each of the annotations around this slide, but these are some good examples in which schools can create additional income and make savings, both from internal and external facilities. There's some very obvious ones: the playing fields, the swimming pools, tennis courts. Then there's the internal ones, even classrooms, just halls. There is a community need out there. Find out what your community needs and see if you can match it. Not only does that bring in the income, but it also helps promote the school in the local community. It helps make that school where it should be, at the heart of the community, and it helps propagate future generations of pupils. It helps attract future staff. It's a really important thing for you guys to consider. There are some marvellous examples out there. I've got a school where effectively they have used the dining facility, the catering facility, and the external facilities to put on wedding ceremonies. I mean, what a great use of out-of-hours schools, the resources there. I understand that this has been a whistle-stop tour. I know that many consultants and schools will have many more reasons to claim why their CIF bid failed. I have just limited it to 3. I've also limited the time of this presentation in the hope that it will engender some debate, some questions. I'm sure, as I say, many of you out there will have your own theories, and it would be great to discuss those with you now, or indeed at a future time. So thank you again for all of your patience, and I look forward to hearing from you later. Thank you very much.